is, do the newspapers contribute to human happiness? Oh, it's easy enough to say yes, but you can't dispose of the question in that offhand fashion. That is a serious question that I've posed. I repeat it. Do the newspapers contribute to human happiness? Suppose there had been no newspapers. Would we be any the worse off? Oh, it's easy enough to say we can do without politicians, do without cabinet ministers, and the like. Nevertheless, I press the need for a reply to that question. And much depends on the answer. Now, I detect consternation on the faces of the gentlemen beside me who have to participate in this important debate. I hope I haven't disturbed the notes they have prepared. Anyhow, there is the question.
The press is very angry with the government because of the newsprint cuts. The press is entitled to protest against those cuts. It's entitled to say that the government has made a mistake, that the saving in dollars affected by this cut is too small to matter, that the service of the press to the public is being needlessly impaired. These are, and I see you agree with me, legitimate arguments. What is not a legitimate argument is to say that the government has imposed these cuts because of a desire to muzzle the press and to restrict the freedom of writing in this country. It is not a legitimate argument because, in my opinion, the majority of the people who are using it do not themselves believe it. They may think it makes good propaganda against the cuts, but there is such a thing as propaganda which overplays its hand. It's a very serious thing to say that a government elected democratically by the people of Britain has set out on a course of tampering with the press in order to safeguard itself against criticism. That is just the kind of... I'll begin with the Daily Mail. Now, the Daily Mail, Mr. Chairman, has two things in common with Mr. Rust's Daily Worker. It prints its leading article on the front page, and it holds a very low opinion of the Daily Herald. There was a period when it seemed to us in Fleet Street that the people responsible for the Daily Mail were struggling somewhat confusedly in the folds of Lord Northcliffe's mantle. But I'm very ready to acknowledge that in recent years the paper has shown a great vigor of expression and great technical improvement of which its founder would be proud. It is the traditional practice of the Daily Mail to say whatever it has to say at the top of its voice, and in this pursuit it's well served by the present editor, my brilliant friend Frank Owen. Owen, Mr. Chairman, you will probably remember as a Liberal MP who was in 1929 the baby of the House. He is...
I've known him for a long time. I served you this winter, Manny.
That's why we cut you down to 4, you wouldn't need them.
And pictures of your dear colleagues. Well, so you see, we are determined to get along, despite the efforts of some interested persons to sabotage the bond of friendship which exists between the Daily Mail and His Majesty's government. Now we come to the other editors. I'm sorry Bill Rust isn't... When I was a young Liberal, it wasn't entirely our fault. We were against the government. When in 1931 the Liberal Party went over and joined Mr. Ramsay MacDonald, Mr. Cudlipp's late leader, I was against that government. As far as I can remember before the war, I said very few good words in favor of Mr. Chamberlain's government. And since the war has ended, I've not found it very difficult to criticize the present administration. when the new coalition comes in, I expect that to be critical of that too. Now, I would agree with this about Mr. Percy Cudlipp when he speaks about the newsprint cut. I do not, ladies and gentlemen, believe that the government have cut newsprint deliberately in order to stifle free opinion. I don't think there's anything deliberate about it. In fact, I don't think there's anything deliberate about a great deal of what this government does. I think they stumble from one problem to another and generally fall down on it when they arrive there. Not deliberately, but doing what comes naturally. And they've done that over the newsprint cut. I don't believe for one moment they realized either the unemployment it was going to cause in Fleet Street or in ranges far beyond Fleet Street, or the general protest which has arisen throughout the country about it. I don't know if you're going to come to the meeting tonight, Percy, at the Central Hall, Westminster, where the London Society of Compositors will be protesting about the cut, but I hope if you don't, you'll send a good reporter. This matter is one which far transcends party politics. It's, as Mr. Colling Brooks has said, a matter which belongs to the whole nation. I don't believe that the thing was done by design. As I say, I believe it was done by accident, but the effect of it is going to be as bad as though it had been done by design. You are going to cut down the free expression of people's opinions throughout the newspaper. Now, it wasn't the Daily Mail, it was the News Chronicle the other day which carried out an interesting survey in which it found that on a 6-page paper, both the Daily Mail and the Daily Express were able to carry 2.5 times as much news as they could on a 4-page paper about the debates in Parliament. One of the effects of this restriction to 4 pages is going to mean that one of the most important parts of the House of Commons is going to be silenced. Those are the backbenchers who disagree with their own government. By the time we've carried ministerial statements and the contradictions by fellow ministers, same night, we're not going to have a great deal of room left. Even Mr. Herbert Morrison found that out on Friday, when having imposed this savage and senseless cut upon the newspapers, he asked the newspaper advertising managers to come and meet him and discuss advertising space for a new government campaign. He was greatly surprised to hear that he'd got to be rationed in the same way as every other advertiser. And what he's going to do with all the successive campaigns which he proposes to launch, I don't know unless he takes up stop press space. He's going to tell what happens in other newspapers? Of course I don't, though I agree with very often much of it. But that's completely irrelevant.
Say to the front bench in Parliament, on either side, or to the back benches, which after all is the proper place for Frank Owen.
Yeah.
Now, I asked a question at the outset of the proceedings, whether the newspapers contributed to human happiness, and no one has vouchsafed an answer. They've sidestepped the most vital question of all. I venture upon an answer myself. The reading of newspapers, whether dailies, evening, or Sundays, is now a habit. In the morning, we wait eagerly and expectantly for the click of the letterbox, when the boy pushes the newspaper through the aperture. And why? It's like the first cigarette in the morning, or the early morning cup of tea. We've just formed the habit. But one, in the opinion of medical experts, is as poisonous as the other. and also to express our gratitude to the Foyle establishment for bringing us together this afternoon